A few years ago, former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy began speaking out about a growing public health epidemic that might surprise you: loneliness. Murthy told the Washington Post, quote, "When I began my tenure as Surgeon General, I did not think that I would be talking about loneliness and emotional well-being. But when I was traveling to communities across the country, I found that loneliness was a profound issue that was affecting people of all ages and socioeconomic backgrounds. This is true in urban areas, in rural areas, in the heartland of the country, and on the coast." Murthy noticed that medical studies revealed that prolonged loneliness leads to an increased risk of anxiety, depression, heart disease, and dementia, among other things. Multiple studies over the last few years confirm Murthy's observation. In February 2020, a study found that 43% of adults ages 60 and older reported feeling lonely. A study in October 2020 by the Harvard Graduate School of Education found that 61% of young people ages 18 to 25 report experiencing serious loneliness, which is feeling lonely either frequently or all the time. 51% of mothers with young children also reported experiencing serious loneliness. Unfortunately, most of us don't need a study to tell us that we're lonely and that being lonely has a negative impact on our health. We've experienced it firsthand, and the last year has only amplified those feelings of loneliness as this pandemic required us to physically stay away from each other. Even in a non-pandemic year, many of us have felt lonely. Sometimes it's the feeling that no one cares about you or that you are a burden to others. Sometimes it's feeling like you need to face all your problems alone as a single parent, widower, or young single person. Sometimes it's just a deep soul feeling that even though you are surrounded by friends and family, no one truly knows you. And sometimes it's feeling like you don't have any friends at all. There are a million reasons why we feel lonely, so of course that loneliness starts to take a toll on us. The irony is that we are not alone in feeling lonely. From the very beginning of creation, God knew that loneliness was not good for humanity. In the Genesis creation story, God finishes God's creating spree by making Adam. And instead of looking at Adam and being satisfied, God said, this isn't good. It is not good for this human to be alone. So God creates Eve to be a companion for Adam. This story is often used to affirm the importance of marriage, but on a broader level, this story shows us that humans are created for connection. We need to live life together and not alone. We've spent the last few weeks talking about what it means to be the church. We talked about the term ecclesia, which is usually translated as church, but actually means a gathering or group of people. Last week, we looked at the early ecclesia in the book of Acts and their radical commitment to caring for each other, making sure that everyone's needs were met. Today, we're back in Acts 2 again, looking at the way the early ecclesia shared life together on a regular basis. Let's read Acts 2:42 through 47 together now. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were being done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the good will of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. In a culture where Christians were outnumbered and persecuted, this scrappy little group quickly learned the importance of being together. Spending time together was how they grew in faith, cared for each other, and encouraged each other through difficult times. The Greek word translated as fellowship in verse 42 is koinonia. This word connotes more than just becoming casual acquaintances. Koinonia implies intimacy and partnership. The early ecclesia were deeply invested in each other's lives. If I had to guess, I'd say many of you here today want to feel deeply connected to the church. You don't want to just be another body in the pew or face in front of a phone screen. You want to know and be known. You want to feel like you're participating in a movement for the greater good in the world. You want to have people with whom you can share your life and experiences of God. But it's hard to know where to start, especially in a church as big as ours. How do you find that connection that goes deeper than an hour on Sunday mornings? Although some of you are probably just fine with being around these people for just an hour each week. That's okay too. I personally have always found my deepest friendships in church. I met my 5 best friends in a 3rd grade Sunday school class 2 decades ago. And even though we no longer share a church or a zip code, we continue to share life together. We've celebrated weddings and babies, graduations and new jobs. We've been there for each other through breakups, deaths, divorces, and crises of faith. That was my first experience of what it means to be church, and it has convinced me that there is no reason anyone should ever have to feel alone at church. So how do we find those connections? How do we cultivate those relationships? Well, we have to find a church within our church, a small group, some might say. Small groups are a way that we can meet people who care about the same things we do, who are in a similar life stage, who are also trying to figure out what it means to be a follower of Christ in 2021. We talked about the church caring for each other last week, and in a few weeks we're talking about the church caring for our city. Small groups are a place for us to do that. Small groups care for each other and serve the community together. Now, some of you may be thinking, Rachel, that sounds amazing, but I've had some pretty bad small group experiences. Or maybe you're thinking, I'm not the type of person to sit in a circle sharing my feelings with other people. And I get it. I've been there. Small groups, as we traditionally think of them, aren't for everyone. But today, I want us to reimagine what small groups can be. When we think of small groups or Sunday school, we probably think of sitting in a circle in a room somewhere, pretending we read the chapter for the week, and awkward silences when the leader asks a question. The only part of small group we actually like is the 15 minutes before and after when we get to just sit around and talk about whatever. Or the odd Friday night when we go to someone's house to grill out. It doesn't have to be that way. What if I told you small groups can be fun and life-giving? We put too much pressure on what small groups are supposed to look like and what they're supposed to talk about. But there's no one right way to be a small group. The possibilities are actually endless. A small group is a group of people coming together for a common purpose. In church settings, that purpose is usually tied to a shared faith or a shared calling to care for the community with the love of Christ. Years ago, a small group of women in my childhood church started meeting together regularly to pray about and discuss a piece of church property that was up for sale. They wanted to see the land and the building on it used for God's glory. After months of meeting together, these wild praying women started a nonprofit that provided transitional housing and addiction support programs for women coming out of prison. That nonprofit now has multiplied to several locations throughout Tennessee and has impacted hundreds of women since it began. In college, a group of guy friends wanted to find the best barbecue in Birmingham. So every few weeks, they met at a different barbecue restaurant and had small group. I was always a little upset that being a girl disqualified me from participating. Who doesn't love barbecue? When I lived in a small town in Georgia, a few women in my church started talking and realized they all cared about LGBTQ inclusion and racial justice. So they started a small group to read and learn together how they could better love these neighbors while still living out their faith. Another friend and her husband became foster parents and realized just how difficult and lonely it was. So they reached out to other foster parents in their church to meet and regularly pray for and share their experiences with each other. I've had friends start running groups, basketball groups, parent groups, and groups that serve a specific local cause together. And all of these are church. God is present in all kinds of ways. Last week, Brian mentioned that we would have the opportunity for you to connect to different ministries in our church each week. And if you haven't figured it out yet, this week the invitation is to get involved in adult, children, and youth small groups at MCC. You can sign up for any of the opportunities I'm about to mention by visiting our website. Filling out a form is not a binding commitment, but an opportunity to learn more and then decide if you want to commit. So let's go through these opportunities together. I'm going to start with adult small groups. On August 15th, we are beginning a church-wide series called Starting Point. And we want to start some new small groups around this study. We've got a discussion guide with simple questions that will invite you to explore your faith journey more deeply with other people. To start small groups, we need people willing to lead. And this series is a great starting point. If you think, but I'm not a leader, I'm not a teacher or Bible expert, I'll be part of a small group, sure, but I'm not cut out to lead. Let me ask you something. Have you ever made plans to go out to dinner with your friends? Have you ever invited people over to your house? Have you ever asked someone a question? Have you ever sent an email? Do you love Jesus and people? Congrats! You're qualified to be a small group leader. In all seriousness, signing up to be a small group leader can be intimidating, which is why I want to make sure you are equipped and have the support you need. If you think you might want to lead a small group of any kind, not just Starting Point, check that box on the sign-up form. We're hosting a small group leader training on Sunday, August 1st at 12 p.m. at the church. This is a meeting for current and future small group leaders, so you won't be alone. Lunch is provided if you sign up. If you don't want to be a small group leader, but you want to join a small group and meet people, fill out the form and we will be in touch with you in the next few weeks about joining a group. Adults aren't the only ones who benefit from small groups. We've got opportunities for you to help in children's and youth ministry this fall. For children's ministry, you can volunteer as a Sunday morning greeter, kids worship leader or storyteller, kids small group leader or substitute, and a Sunday evening helper. For youth ministry, you can volunteer as a Sunday morning or Sunday evening small group leader, Sunday dinner prepper, occasional event chaperone, or Sunday morning youth worship helper. Y'all, our children and our youth are a delight. I always have fun when I help with either group, and I encourage you to take a chance and sign up. We need to invest in the next generation of Christian leaders, and this is the opportunity. We also need to support our parents, and volunteering with youth and children's ministry is a way that we can minister to the parents in our congregation. Training is provided for all these positions, and I promise you will have the eternal gratitude of Amanda and Corey. Small groups won't automatically cure your loneliness, but they are a great place to start when looking for connection. They're a place we can belong, and we can invite friends to find a place to belong to. I hope as we enter into this fall, we will see all kinds of small groups spring up. Whether they are together forever or for a season, small groups help us start to live life together as a church.